In this video I'm gonna have a look at two Fedora-based gaming distributions that are Nobara 41 and Bazzite and pit them against Windows 11. I tested single-player games at 1440p and 4K without ray tracing, with ray tracing only at 1440p, and a few competitive games at 1440p and 1080p, all using the RX 7900 XTX. I want to mention that in the comparison I included a game that runs native on Linux and uses DirectX 11 on Windows. In my previous video I checked two Arch-based distributions where I did some minor CPU benchmarks, but in this video the focus will be pure gaming. The two Fedora-based distros are as they come, meaning when you download them and install the operating system and after that install the games. There are no tweaks or any other performance improvements applied. When it comes to Windows, I'm using the latest video drivers available at the time of the benchmarks, that is the 2412 paired with the latest AMD chipset drivers. Core isolation is turned off and the memory kits are mild tweaked alongside the CPU. Moving on to Nobara 41, on the screen now you have some OS information where you can see the kernel used. And now this is the information regarding Bazzite. As opposed to Nobara 41, Bazzite isn't a rolling distro, it's immutable, it retains the previous versions after each update. For new users, this should be no concern as both distros require minimal maintenance, you just need to update when prompted to do so. First, let's start with the side-by-side runs for single-player games at 1440p and 4K.
I can't live in these pajamas the rest of my life.
He jumped up and walloped that secret piece so hard.
Looking at the 1440p results, we can see Windows 11 pulling ahead in two games, Beyond a Steel Sky and Total War Pharaoh Dynasties. The former comes as a surprise, as on Linux it runs native. I checked with Proton as well, and native seemed to produce a few more frames per second, so the results in this chart are from the native runs. Arch distros experience the same performance gap in Total War, as it seems that this is a Linux or maybe a translation layer issue. The two distros were performing much better than Windows in Ratchet & Clank, while in Age of Mythology, Life is Strange, Warhammer 40k, Tomb Raider 2013 and Black Myth Wukong, the performance gap was minor. When comparing the performance between these two Linux distros, Bazzite delivered better results in Alan Wake 2, while in the other games these two were neck and neck. When looking at the overall results, Windows has a minor advantage, and that is because of the two games where it had a bigger lead, though the difference is minor between all three operating systems. Increasing the resolution to 4K, Windows has minor performance advantages in Beyond the Steel Sky and Total War, while in Final Fantasy XVI the difference drops to around 3 frames per second. The two Fedora-based Linux distributions deliver better performance than Windows in Age of Mythology and Ratchet & Clank, while in the other games the performance gap is equal or a bit better, but less than 3 frames per second, which I consider margin of error. Looking at the overall results for the 4K runs, the two Linux distros have a minor performance lead, but nothing major, with Nobara 41 being on top. Now let's move to ray tracing.
Well, Casey, I got a lead. Looks like we're dealing with a cult. The cult of the tree.
Murder cult. Fuck.
So, she jumped up and walloped that secret piece so hard.
With ray tracing enabled, Windows seems to have the upper hand. In the two games that were tested with path tracing, Windows is much smoother, but the performance is still low with the AMD GPUs. Another game that Windows has an obvious advantage is Indiana Jones, where it leads Nobara 41 by 20 frames per second. Nothing surprising here. Linux trails Windows when enabling ray tracing, with Nobara 41 edging Bazzite. This difference may be due to the fact that Bazzite was using an older display driver, but the difference is so small that it doesn't really matter. A bit of a surprise to me was that I was not able to run Counter-Strike 2 on native. It simply refused to start. I saw on the internet that this may be an issue due to G-overlay, but as I used it in the other games for recording the stats, I had to switch to a translation layer, in this case Proton GE. I didn't have this issue in my previous video, the one regarding the Arch distros, so I'm not sure if this issue arisen from a later update or is something specific to Fedora based distros. Another issue encountered when using these two distros is that in the finals the game was dropping performance. When starting the game in the practice range, the frame rates were low. I had to move around a lot in order for them to increase, and even so the frame rates were dropping again. It was not smooth when doing the benchmarks. I tried different versions of Proton and Proton GE, but all behaved the same. Take the results that you're gonna see with a grain of salt. Looking at the 1080p results, Linux is ahead in Counter-Strike 2, even when using a translation layer. I suspect that the issue in Windows is the below 100% GPU utilization, while in Linux it stood around 100%. In the finals, Windows led, but as previously mentioned, even though the two Linux distros were close in performance, there were issues. In Marvel Rivals, the performance was close, with the two Linux distros enjoying a small lead. Increasing the resolution to 1440p, the performance balance changes dramatically in Counter-Strike 2, as now, in Windows, the GPU utilization is around 100% like in Linux. Windows enjoys a big lead of more than 60 frames per second. When looking at the finals, the performance gap seems high, but the game doesn't behave properly when gaming on these two Linux distros, so I would not say that Windows is the loser here. In Marvel Rivals, there were no performance differences. A lot of people were asking for this comparison, and now I managed to deliver it. Nobara 41 seems to be on the same level as Bazzite, both trailing Windows when ray tracing is in the mix, but matching it in single-player games. My surprise came when moving to competitive games, as I encountered a few issues as opposed to the Arch-based distros that I tested in the previous video. Now, which do I prefer? I prefer Nobara 41, but I'm a bit biased as I rocked Nobara for some time and I really love it. Both distros are amazing and are good for gaming. One issue that I should mention is that in Bazzite, when using Latris, the Epic Store or any other gaming store were not there. I had to search for those to add them, while in Nobara everything was ready. And that's it for this video. If you found the video helpful, click the thumbs up button, consider subscribing to the channel, and let me know in the comment section of this video if you tried one of these two distros and share your experience. Take care and hope to see you all in the next one.